The dust had finally settled. After years of wandering, of sand between their toes and manna on their tongues, they were home. Joshua, that lion of a leader, had led them across the Jordan. He had seen the walls of Jericho tumble down, not with a bang, but with a shout of faith. He had carved out a space for God's people in the land that was promised to them, a land flowing with milk and honey. For a generation, there was peace. There was purpose. They remembered the stories. They remembered the miracles. They remembered the God who had split the sea and held back a river just for them. The generation that had seen God's power with their own eyes was still there, their voices steady as they recounted the tales of his faithfulness. They were a living reminder of the covenant. And then, one by one, the elders passed away. Joshua, their fearless leader, was laid to rest. The ones who had stood with him, the ones who had fought beside him, they too were gone. A whole generation arose that did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. The anchor that had held them fast to God was gone. They looked at the Canaanites with their strange gods and their alluring rituals, and they thought, why not? And so, the slow compromise began. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. Imagine a world with no stop signs, no rules, no one to say, that's wrong. It was a time of brutal selfishness. Neighbor turned against neighbor. Tribe fought against tribe. Justice was a forgotten concept. Might made right. The nation that was supposed to be a beacon of God's light to the world had become a dark and terrifying place, indistinguishable from the pagan nations it was meant to displace. This was not what God wanted. His heart broke to see his children, the people he had rescued from slavery, now enslaved to their own sin. In their self-made misery, the people of Israel found themselves oppressed. The Midianites would sweep in like locusts at harvest time, stealing their crops and livestock, leaving them with nothing. Stripped of their food, their freedom, and their dignity, the people would finally remember. In the depths of their despair, when the pain became too much to bear, a cry would rise from the land. And the most amazing thing happened. God heard them, every single time. He didn't say, I told you so. He didn't turn his back as they had turned theirs. He chose the unlikely. He chose the overlooked. Think of Gideon, hiding in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret to keep it from the Midianites. He was the least in his family, from the weakest clan. He was afraid, yet God called him a mighty warrior. Think of Deborah, a woman, a prophetess, leading the armies of Israel from under a palm tree when the men were too afraid to fight. He used Gideon's tiny army of 300 men with trumpets and torches to rout the entire Midianite horde, so that no one could claim the victory was their own. The cycle was exhausting. Sin, oppression, repentance, deliverance, peace. And then sin all over again. The people grew tired of the roller coaster. They looked around at the other nations. They saw the Philistines with their organized armies. They saw the Ammonites with their royal courts. They saw the Moabites with their visible, powerful kings. The elders of Israel came to the aging prophet Samuel. They came to him not with a request, but with a demand. You are old, they said, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. Their words were a dagger in Samuel's heart, and in God's. They weren't just rejecting Samuel's leadership, they were rejecting God himself. So Samuel laid it all out for them. He told them their king would take their sons and make them serve with his chariots. He would take their daughters to be perfumers and cooks. He would take the best of their fields, their vineyards, and their olive groves. But the people refused to listen. Their minds were made up. No, they shouted, we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles. If you're going to have a king, you might as well get one who looks the part. And Saul, son of Kish, certainly did. The Bible tells us he was a head taller than anyone else in Israel. He was handsome, from a wealthy family, the very image of royalty. God gave the people what they asked for, and he chose the best possible candidate by human standards. At first, things went well. Saul was humble. He was filled with the Spirit of God and led Israel to a decisive victory over the Ammonites, uniting the tribes and proving his mettle as a military leader. The people were overjoyed. This was it. This was what they had wanted. But the problem with a human king is that he has a human heart, and the heart is susceptible to fear and pride. Facing a massive Philistine army, he grew impatient, waiting for Samuel to arrive and offer the proper sacrifice. He took matters into his own hands. The final straw came later. God commanded Saul to utterly destroy the Amalekites, but Saul again disobeyed. He spared the Amalekite king Agag and kept the best of the sheep and cattle. When Samuel confronted him, Saul made excuses. But Samuel saw through it. To obey is better than sacrifice, the prophet declared. Because of his rebellion, God rejected Saul as king. He had the height, the looks, and the title, but he didn't have the heart. While Saul was still on the throne, his reign unraveling thread by painful thread, God was preparing a new king. This time, he wasn't looking for height or appearance. He was looking for a heart. Samuel saw Jesse's oldest son, Eliab. He was tall, impressive, another Saul. But God gently corrected him. Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Jesse admitted there was one more, the youngest, David. He was out in the fields tending the sheep. He was a boy, a shepherd, overlooked, unimpressive. But when they brought him in, God spoke clearly to Samuel. Rise and anoint him. This is the one. And Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed the shepherd boy in the presence of his brothers. From that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. God had found his king. David's heart was evident in everything he did. He wasn't offended that Goliath was insulting the army of Israel. He was offended that this uncircumcised Philistine was defying the armies of the living God. He ran toward the giant not with confidence in himself, but with radical trust in God. Even when Saul, consumed by jealousy, began hunting him like an animal, David's heart remained tender toward God's anointed. Twice, David had the opportunity to kill Saul and end his own suffering. But David refused. This was the heart God was looking for. David became king, and Israel entered its golden age. He united the nation, conquered its enemies, and established Jerusalem as its capital, the city of God. He was a brilliant military leader, a wise administrator, and a beloved king. The kingdom expanded, wealth flowed in, and there was peace and security. It seemed for a time that Israel had finally gotten it right. They had a king chosen by God, a man with a heart for God, and the nation was thriving under his rule. But even the best of men are still just men. And David, the man after God's own heart, was tragically deeply human. At the height of his power, when he should have been out at war with his men, he stayed behind in Jerusalem. He grew comfortable, complacent, and in a moment of idleness, he saw a beautiful woman named Bathsheba bathing. He wanted her, and because he was the king, he took her. He committed adultery, a sin that shattered the trust of his people and, more importantly, broke the heart of his God. Sin rarely stays simple. When Bathsheba became pregnant, David's sin spiraled. To cover his tracks, he descended into deception and murder. The man after God's own heart had become a liar and a murderer. When the prophet Nathan confronted him with a parable about a rich man who stole a poor man's only lamb, David was filled with fury at the injustice. And Nathan pointed his finger at the king and said the 4 words that shattered David's world. You are the man. The crack in the golden king had become a chasm. Through all of this, the chaos of the judges, the people's demand, Saul's rebellion, David's catastrophic failure, one truth remained constant. God had never wanted to hand over the crown in the first place. His plan, from the very beginning, was to be Israel's king himself. He didn't need a palace of cedar and stone. His throne was in the heavens. He didn't need a human army. The angel of the Lord was commander enough. He wanted to lead his people not through a human intermediary, but through a direct relationship of love and trust. When the people asked for a king, they were asking for a demotion. They were trading a divine, all-powerful, all-loving ruler for a flawed, finite human one. Imagine trading the sun for a candle. They wanted a king who would fight their battles for them, forgetting that God had already parted the Red Sea and brought down the walls of Jericho. Their request was a vote of no confidence in God's ability to care for them. After David's great sin and his profound repentance, God did something remarkable. He made him a promise. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. This was a staggering promise. God was looking down the corridors of time toward a future son of David who would be different. A king who would one day be born in David's own hometown of Bethlehem. A king who would have a heart that was not just after God's own heart, but a heart that was the heart of God. He would be the perfect fulfillment of everything the judges and kings were supposed to be, but never could be. He would be the ultimate rescuer and the eternal king. A king who would not fail, a king who would not sin, a king whose reign would have no end. The entire story of the judges and the kings, with all its tragedy and glory, was a prelude. It was setting the stage for the arrival of the one true king whose kingdom would, indeed, last forever.